In 1934, President Franklin Roosevelt traveled to Harrodsburg, Kentucky. He came to dedicate the Kentucky Pioneer Memorial, honoring George Rogers Clark and others who opened up the frontier during and after the Revolutionary War. Nearby, there is an older and more modest monument that remembers four brothers. One of them is the 8th Virginia Regiment's Colonel Abraham Bowman. Bowman's story starts here, in Strasburg, Virginia, 500 miles to the east. Strasburg was once a frontier town, too. You can see evidence of that if you look around. It was a colonial town. This street is named for an English king, probably George II. Bowman was the grandson of Jost Haidt, a German who led his extended family from Pennsylvania into the Shenandoah Valley in the 1730s. Bowman grew up in this house, which looks very much like a Pennsylvania farmhouse. His father operated a mill here on Cedar Creek. The mill is long gone, but this road is still named Bowman's Mill Road, and of course Cedar Creek is still here. Abraham was just a little boy when the French and Indian War broke out, but his father's house was used as a fort when there was danger. The stone house doesn't seem to date back quite that far, but there was another house here then, maybe a log house with a stockade around it. One day when he was about 17 years old, a girl who lived across the road came and begged for his help. Her entire family had just been killed by an Indian war party joined by a local criminal. As the Revolution approached, he served in the Dunmore County Committee of Safety. In 1775, he joined a local volunteer company that responded to the Williamsburg gunpowder alarm. In 1776, he received a lieutenant colonel's commission in Virginia's 8th Regiment under Colonel Peter Muhlenberg. Muhlenberg lived 17 miles down the Shenandoah Valley's Great Wagon Road in the town of Woodstock. The regiment's other field officer, Major Peter Helfenstein, lived 19 miles up the road in Winchester. All three of them were German. Virginia's Revolutionary Convention wanted the 8th to be a German regiment, but many of the junior officers and enlisted men were Scotch-Irish or English or members of other ethnicities. They spent the first couple of months around Williamsburg and Suffolk, Virginia, before heading south with Major General Charles Lee. They were at Charleston for the Battle of Sullivan's Island and news of the Declaration of Independence. By then, many of them had contracted malaria, which was endemic to the coastal South in those days. Major Helfenstein was so sick he resigned and went home. 147 others were left in Charleston when Lee took his little army farther south to attack St. Augustine in the new British colony of East Florida. They only made it as far as Sunbury, Georgia, before the malaria got so bad that they couldn't move any farther. Many men died. There's a cemetery here, but there's no marker or memorial or gravestones for any of the soldiers who died here in the summer of 1776. A fort was built here later in the war, but today Sunbury is pretty much a ghost town. General Lee was then called back north, and Lieutenant Colonel Bowman led his men home to Virginia in December. In the spring, Colonel Muhlenberg was made a general, and Bowman was promoted to full colonel. They joined Washington's army in New Jersey and went on to fight at Brandywine and Germantown in a brigade commanded by General Charles Scott. They spent the winter at Valley Forge and camped at the right end of the outer lines. These fierce-looking warriors are posing with a monument that marks the spot. The enlistments of most of Bowman's original men expired at Valley Forge, but he served on. His depleted regiment was merged into an ad hoc unit with the 4th and 12th Regiments under Colonel William Grayson at the Battle of Monmouth. In September, the regiments of the Virginia line were consolidated, and Bowman was too junior in his rank to hold on to a command. He returned home and prepared to go to Kentucky, where his brothers John and Isaac had been serving with George Rogers Clark. In the fall of 1779, he led a train of 30 families to Kentucky and spent the winter building Bowman's Station, a settlement a few miles east of Harrodsburg on the Dix River. Soon after, he moved 30 miles north and built a new cabin on the south branch of the Elkhorn Creek just outside of Lexington. As frontier cabins went, it was luxurious. It had a basement and an exterior staircase leading up to a second floor. The cabin survives and was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1979. More recently, it was expertly restored. Bowman prospered and built a much bigger house for himself, which today is known as Helm Place. He was a prominent man. He was active in politics and owned a tremendous amount of land. He defended Henry Clay after the controversial presidential election of 1824. He gave a formal speech greeting the Marquis de Lafayette when he visited Lexington in 1825. Abraham Bowman is not a household name. The whiskey named after him is more famous than he is. We don't even know what he looked like. There are no portraits painted of him. But like so many others of his generation, he took tremendous risks for his family, for his country, and for liberty. After a long life, Abraham Bowman died in 1837 at the age of 88. He's buried here in Lexington, surrounded by generations of his descendants. And though he's not famous, there are a few who remember what he did for Virginia, for Kentucky, and for his country.
Colonel Abraham Bowman, thank you for your service.